Mr. Pate, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I look at my calendar. I still don't really know what I'm doing for the 4th. Do you have any big plans, Nuno? What's on your docket?
For the 4th, no, I'm leaving the 5th for North Carolina with my daughters for a soccer tournament. The 4th, I don't think we have anything planned yet. Might go to a lake, might just do chores around the house. What about yourself?
Fun, fun. Yeah, I'll be down in Georgia somewhere. Where in North Carolina are you going? Like,
Sh-
just a town?
Charlotte.
Oh, beautiful. You go there often?
We've, yeah, I wouldn't say often, but we go. Yeah, my daughters are overachievers and make me spend a lot of money, sending them across the country. So yeah, we go to Charlotte every once a year at least.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's crazy how either Nashville or Charlotte ends up being where Nashville, Charlotte, and Atlanta. If you combine those three cities, you've got like 95% of college football media. And the beautiful thing about that is most of them are Atlanta Braves fans, which, warms my heart. Not this year in particular, because it's just been a misery fest, but warms my heart. So that's a good place to be, man.
Of those three, my favorite place to go is Nashville. And I am here hoping that next year's SEC Media Day will be in Nashville. That's my
You
guess.
know how nice, it was to be able to walk to media days from my apartment. It'll probably never happen again. If I move from here, that'll be the indicator that it's coming back, because I'll never get that lucky again.
Hey, I got to ask you about your criteria for like how you broke it down. Look, I'm one of these that I don't care what people's opinions are. We can go back and forth on stuff, but I don't like if you think Kyle Field is this or they think that, that's fine, whatever, right? Like, but I was just curious your criteria.
You're talking about for the toughest places to
Yeah.
play. Um, so what I did was I applied my experience. So the two that I hated, I couldn't put on there were Iowa, because I've never been to a game there. Well, actually three. So Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin are three I haven't been to, and you hear some degree of really good things about. So I couldn't put them there. So you could call the list incomplete. Then you've got other games so we can mention A&M here. So I went to two A&M games last year, stood on the sideline the entirety of both of them. The Missouri game, blowout to the point where the second half's not competitive. The Texas game was, I don't know how you felt about that. Well, actually, you probably stated over and over again how you felt about the game, but there was kind of a weird longing for there to be a spark offensively. And then when they had to pick in the second half, that was probably as electric as the place was the whole time. It's not that, it was ever over until it was over, but you didn't have that back and forth where you take it in the end zone and then the following series, 1st and 10, 2nd and 8, 3rd and 7, Texas, places at full throat. You didn't have that 5 or 6 times. What I'm trying to say is I have yet to experience that place the way I know it probably is. The way, like, when you've upset Alabama and I've turned the game on from a distance, I see it, but I haven't been able to feel it. So, in that sense, the the list is kind of what it is. Like, it's your opinion, it's your experience. Conversely, I've been in Neyland the last two times they upset Bama.
Right.
So they upset Bama, they stormed the field, and the first time they did it was the first time in 15 years they've beat them. So I know I've experienced Neyland Stadium at its very best. I know I've experienced like Tiger Stadium at night at its very best. So some of those places just have a leg up. Like the only time I've been to a Clemson game was when they played A&M actually to open the season several years ago. I think the kickoff temperature was like 138 degrees, 139 degrees, somewhere around there. So that was a great atmosphere, but there's probably another level up when the temperature's not triple digits and it's a night game that Tiger Stadium at Clemson could hit. So that was mine. Now, what you said there, it was very mature of you. You said, if someone has an opinion and I have an opposing opinion, I can just disagree with him and move on. Nuno, that's a rarity. That is a rarity. I have found that a lot of people do not possess that opinion. A lot of people will look at your opinion and say, your opinion's wrong. And that's a fact. It is a fact that your opinion is wrong. Now, I listen to that and I say, well, that's like me saying I like cheesecake and you saying, no, it's a fact that you don't. How can that be a fact
Right.
that I don't? But what I was doing was in response to the EA Sports thing,
Yeah.
because the EA Sports toughest places to play like didn't have Neyland Stadium top 10. Well, it had Georgia number 3. And all due respect to Georgia, I've been in both of those buildings several times for big games. Like, Neyland's a level above Sanford Stadium. What they were obviously taking into account was winning percentage at home. And if you're going to bake it in like that, to me, Georgia could turn a Publix parking lot into the toughest place to play in college football. Because as long as Georgia, over the past 8 or 9 years, is playing there, it's going to be really hard to beat Georgia, even if you're playing them in a parking lot, because they're a really good team. And conversely, I don't care if Neyland Stadium's like playing on the runway at Hobby Airport or at Bush Intercontinental. If they suck, there is no amount of brick and mortar and bleachers and screaming people that could make a bad team not bad. So you got to have a good team in the mix. Like, I think we all understand that. I was just going off pure atmosphere that I've experienced.
Well, one of the things that I'll say is that if A&M wins, and they have to win on the road to affect their wins at home. And what I mean by that is, if A&M last year would have won one of those games against Notre Dame or Texas, right? Had they not maybe had some of the issues, on the road at South Carolina and Auburn, then I think we look at them differently with the most recent lens, right? Like, to me,
Yeah.
but the thing that I think A&M has going for itself is if you look at what they've done on the road the last 5-6 years, I don't remember the last time they beat a ranked opponent. I know our team was looking at it on the road, right? But then when you
Yep.
look at what they've done at home, not only have they won, I think they are 12-10 against ranked teams at home over the last whatever amount of years, but they've beaten really good teams. An LSU team that went to the SEC championship game a couple years ago when A&M only had 4 wins. The Alabama game. So, like, to me, like, Kyle Field may not be the most dangerous place to play. It's the most magical place to play for A&M is how I kind of see it.
I don't mind phrasing it like that. So I've always felt like you can get a good vibe for that, ironically, from watching on TV. And what I'm saying about that is some places, I don't really know how to quantify this. Some places you turn on the game on TV and it's just loud, but I mean, it's a big college football stadium that's loud. I don't know if you've ever felt this. Do you ever feel when you turn on some games, maybe you're probably watching a stadium you've never been to before, in all likelihood, but you're watching it and you're saying, for some reason, it feels like this game's being played on the moon.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like that road team is in another galaxy. Now, I always turned on, and this is going to be really random, I always turned on Kansas State and Iowa State games when I was a kid because I'd watch it all. I turned on Big 12 games, and it's like Kansas State, it's Iowa State, Manhattan. I didn't know there was a Manhattan other than the one in New York until college football introduced me to it. Ames, Iowa. I'm watching these places. I know in those cases they're not even as big as the SEC and the Big Ten venues. It sounds loud. I don't know if they're miking the crowd more. It sounds loud, but it just looks like those places are in Russia, like out beyond the middle of nowhere. And I just felt like it leaned on the road team. In the SEC, I think the place that does the best version of that is A&M, except that you also have the benefit of over 100,000 people at A&M. And then also the game day vibe and the in-stadium vibe because of the unique culture there. And the unique set of traditions you have there, it sets itself apart. You could close your eyes and just listen to an A&M game, the musical presentation alone, with the difference in how that sounds versus the way a traditional band sounds. You know immediately it's Texas A&M. You know immediately from the different chants in the stadium. It sounds more like a European soccer game than it does a normal college football game, and that's a very good thing. So I do think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying. That's how that stuff hits me. You explained how it hits you. That's always how it's hit me.
So yesterday on the show, organically, I brought up I don't even know how it hit my mind, and I want you to talk through it because it's a horrible idea that I want to implement in college football, and you as the commissioner. But hear me through this. All right. How about, there's all this talk about the conference championship game losing its merit. Okay. Help me come up with a way that rivalry week matters more, and it always matters, but like with playoff stakes. So I threw out there on the show, and I know it's a horrible idea. You lose your rivalry week game, you don't go to the playoffs. Tell me how stupid that idea is.
Well, you know me, okay? You know you're going to find favor in my camp with this because I just did something last night. We haven't released it yet. I had to pre-record some stuff for July 4th. I just finished doing a segment last night where a guy asked me, am I crazy to think there's still immense pressure on Ryan Day, even though they just won a national title, because they haven't beaten Michigan in 4 years? And I probably ended up going like 15 minutes of just explaining my entire worldview on college football. because it kind of coincides with what you just said. To me, what makes college football great is it's not like any other sport. So in the NFL, it doesn't matter if you lose to your division rival 10 times in a row. If you mix some Super Bowls in, nobody cares. That's the ultimate goal. In college football, this is my worldview. I'm not asking everyone to agree with it. My worldview, if you're the head coach at, let's just say, Ohio State, your number one job is to beat Michigan. That is your first job, to win your rivalry game. Then you can win the Big Ten. Then you can win the national championship. And I understand more and more these days, as you know, the playofffication of college football happens. People think that's backwards logic. No, no, it's unique to think the way you think, because that's only happened in the past 10 years. The previous 100 years was very much in line with what I'm talking about. So if it makes me sound 80 years old, that's okay. But I believe in the tradition of college football. So I also don't believe the playoffs should be as big as it is. So if you're trying to introduce a rule where you add some randomness and total crapshootedness, if you will, to invent terms, into the playoff structure, but also you emphasize rivalry games above and beyond anything else, Nuno, I'd probably be all for it. I don't know how in the world we would sell it to networks and sell it to the commissioners and the ADs. I don't know. We probably got to dig up some dirt on everyone and use it in exchange to get their vote. But I wouldn't mind that at all. But that's only because the playoff's not as important to me. Rivalry games are more important to me than the playoff.
Well, it kind of reminds me of when MLB decided, you know what, the winner of the All-Star game is going to get home field advantage. Like it's a ridiculous idea, but you know, in a meeting, it kind of sounds, oh, maybe.
But here's the difference. I know the All-Star game had traditional meaning. I know that. I think relative to college football, rivalry games mean way more than the All-Star game ever meant to baseball. And I know my history on baseball, okay? So I know how incredible the All-Star game used to be. The whole Pete Rose, Ray Fosse, like I get it, man. I'm a student of history of that game as well. But we're talking about college football where the lore and the tradition of rivalry games within the context of that sport is even more important than the All-Star game ever was for Major League Baseball. So we're talking about something more important in preserving the value of. Now, I'll say this, and it may just be because we're still new in this era. Last year was one of the nightmare scenarios because last year Ohio State loses their rivalry game and wins a national championship. And you look at it and you say, did that just devalue the impact or magnitude of that rivalry? It is fair to say it did. I can speak for myself in saying, at least in that 1 year sample size, I still felt like that was the end of the world for Ohio State when they lost the game. But that's only because in the moment, I looked at it and I thought, who cares that they're going to make the playoff? This ship's dead in the water. They're just going to go lose in the playoff. Like, that's kind of how I felt about it. But in retrospect, yeah, I can't push back if someone says that devalued the meaning of that loss, that they just had a giant safety net and they landed in it. Said, whew, well, I know I just jumped off a 10-story building, but now that I'm alive, I'm going to go see a movie. I'm going to go to the carnival. I don't know.
Hey, I'm looking through some of your 10 games I'm looking most forward to. And the one that catches my eyes for A&M perspective is this Notre Dame-Miami game, because that's week 1. And I'm curious, like, what that week can mean for a couple weeks later when A&M does go to Notre Dame to South Bend. And I'm like, if Miami finds a way to win that game, and I think you've already said that you think Notre Dame will be about what they were last year, roughly 11-1-ish, right? But if that game goes super right for Notre Dame, what that can mean for the rest of the season, and let's just say they drop that game, how important then that A&M game comes, because they still got to go to Arkansas at some point, I think a couple weeks later. And if for them to be a playoff team, they got to be what, at worst 10-2 in that scenario?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I've always wanted my opponents to be undefeated when I play them. I don't want them to ever have tasted their own blood yet. So that shouldn't matter. Like your performance should be your performance no matter what. But I just think back to last year, and I think back to them being humiliated at home against Northern Illinois. That brought out the best in them. That brought out their best football. You shouldn't need that in order to bring out your best football. But if they go on the road in week 1, and listen, this is a very, very foreseeable scenario. If they go lose to Miami in week 1, it's not quite desperation mode. Like you're not quite in do or die mode. But here's the reality about Notre Dame this year. The trade-off for people like me thinking that they could go 11-1 again, they could be right there in that top 5, top 7-ish category at the end of the year. The trade-off for that is we're thinking you have a 3-game season, really. The 3 big ones are at Miami, and then you get Texas A&M and USC at home. And we're expecting you to win 2 of those 3. If you go lose week 1, understand, you have more than 2 losable games left on the schedule. Don't get me wrong. But the 2 big ones, you got to win both of those. Like you're going to have to win both of those, or else you put your fate in the hands of the committee. And also, I mean, think about what that could mean for all the talk that will be about Miami and Carson Beck in that game. Well, if Miami wins it, Beck played well enough. What did C.J. Carr do? What did that defensive line for Notre Dame look like with those departures? And I think about the matchup. Let's just say Miami runs the ball a little bit more effectively than you think they should be able to in week 1. Well, how much does that make you salivate if you're an A&M fan, knowing what your ground game could throw at them and how quickly that could take a crowd out of it in South Bend a few weeks from now? Like that's the beauty of the season, because it goes from theoretical to you actually get your eyes on results, and then it starts to inform your opinion about a few weeks later instead of just like waving magazines around and guessing like everyone else is right now.
Josh, keeping it with Notre Dame, earlier in the show, I went through Heisman contenders that A&M is going to face, and I made the comment, and probably a dumb comment, but I believe it at the moment, that Jeremiah Love's going to be the best player that A&M faces this year. And I'll give you some of the candidates. You know, they got Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame, Lenore Sellers at South Carolina, DJ Lagway at Florida, Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, Arch Manning at Texas. And I'm thinking more offensive-minded, Heisman Trophy contending type of players. How off am I on that thinking? Because especially when A&M faces Jeremiah Love, I just think like his game, it doesn't matter if it's the beginning of the season or later in the season, that guy's going to bring that same kind of level of running throughout the year.
Yeah, and I think he's trying to counter what you're doing to them that day too. Should be a really, really good matchup of ground games. I don't think you're inaccurate in that. I happen to think Lagway is going to go off this year. So like I think he'll be in retrospect in that conversation. Even I would deem it fair if you didn't have him at the forefront in the preseason, because I do still think there's a lot of element to his game that he still has to prove. I've got an opinion of him, but my opinion of him even is based on what I think is going to happen, not just a bunch of what has already happened. But yeah, Love he's there. He's there, and he's got a brand new quarterback that they are certainly not going to put the weight of the offense on the shoulders of early in the year. They want to try and sort of spoon feed him and ease him in as much as they can. Notre Dame's got fairly good pass catchers too this year, so it's not like you're just loading up the box against Jeremiah Love every down, both standard and deviated the entire year. Yeah, that guy, if he's not hurt, I mean, he's a 1,000-yard rusher sometime in November, not even towards the end of the season.
I also said that I feel like Lenore Sellers feels like the most boomer bust this year. And there's not a bust with him. That's just a term I use. But like, I'm not sold on him being this Cam Newton type of quarterback. That being said, I think he'll have moments like a Cam Newton type of quarterback.
He has to. So the whole point about Cam Newton is twofold. First off, he was like an alien physically. The second thing was, who was your second favorite player on that Auburn offense? Any player that anyone ever mentions above and beyond Newton on that team was Nick Fairley, who played defense. So Cam had to carry an offense. It could be that we get to Halloween and maybe South Carolina's in the thick of the race, but they're in the thick of the race because Lenore Sellers is carrying them. Because I got to be real with you, I don't have a ton of confidence in that wide receiver room. They're trying to get their best tailback deemed eligible right now by the NCAA. They don't even know if he's going to be able to play this year. And that's not even to talk about the defensive departures they had to the NFL draft. And this is South Carolina. They recruit pretty good. That's as far as I'll go. They recruit pretty good. They're not an automatic reload, benefit of the doubt type program. But that's all being covered up. Partly understandably so, because Lenore Sellers could be that good. But I agree with you. If you're going boom or bust, it's not even a knock on him. It's a knock on what he has around him and like what his limitations are, even if he plays at like a superhuman level.
Last thing for you. You had a comment. You did a video on how recruiting feels like the old school recruiting. And Bronny and I were chewing on that yesterday, and we agreed with you. But I'm curious, do you think transfer portal has become like the talking point that recruiting was? Like, I feel like when we have these transfer portal threads, they go crazy. What used to be when we talk about a 5-star or a 4-star potentially, coming to A&M, I feel like we're starting to get back to that, especially with how well A&M is recruiting at the moment. But I feel like transfer portal has kind of taken that spot when it comes to that talking point.
I completely agree with you. I saw it in my own data. I don't know the last time I did a fully recruiting centric segment on my show. I've done 500 transfer portal segments. And the reason is because when we did them, a ton of folks clicked on them. And it's not just clicking, like the viewer duration was wire to wire. Conversely, you couldn't get people to click on recruiting videos anymore. And it's because the nature of the sport and how volatile the churn of the portal was had taught you commitments don't really mean anything. And even if they did mean something, oh, it's all just a bidding war. Relationships don't matter. Like the competition between staffs is not relationship versus relationship. It's just who bids the most at the finish line. So I know that turned me off, and it turned a lot of other people off following recruiting. It's very early in this new era. But so far, and there are exceptions to this rule, but so far, like the vibe I've gotten back from a lot of GMs, a lot of folks out on the road recruiting is, I mean, look, we're all still in a lack of a sense bidding on a player, but you're bidding a rev share number on a player, and it's like Nuno bids 280 and I bid 265. Well, if I'm the better fit for him, 25,000 extra dollars is not enough to come in and swing the hammer and he just goes to you for transactional purposes. And so it's kind of reverted back to who developed the best relationships, who gets out on the road and busts their tail, who has the best official visit, who has the best presentation, who has the best fit for the kid. That stuff used to matter. Paramount, it used to matter. And there may be cash changing hands even back in the day, but it wasn't like someone came in and offered 2.5 times what you did. Therefore, I'm coming here even though I really wanted to go there. That was the norm for a little while. And now I think the volume's been turned down. The next order of business is let's see how busy or not busy the portal is with the entire new structure set up.
Josh, great stuff, man. Thank you very much. Enjoy your fourth.
Appreciate it, David.